Poseidon and Zeus, just to mention as far as the features go, had dark hair, but those were the only two characters out of the entire movie besides Theseus and other people. But as far as the gods go specifically, Zeus and Poseidon were the only ones with dark features. Everyone else blended in. We didn't really understand who was who. If we did, it was maybe by the headpiece, but they were all very generic. Besides, Ares. Everyone else had similar headpieces, so we didn't really understand who was who. And when we read over the credits for the movie, we realized that Hercules was one of the characters, and we thought that was Hermes, just, we just thought, that's who it was because we were trying to name characters, but it turned out to be Hercules, which Hercules isn't really, around the gods like that, or around Olympus and chilling with the rest of the gods.
Not within that time period.
Yeah.
He's not until way later. At this point, I think he's still on his 12 labors journey.
He's still struggling.
Yeah,
There's still obstacles for him to go through.
Before he finally gets to Olympus. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my next point is that how powers, or how the gods and their powers were related, and portrayed within the movie. Zeus had a whip.
A fiery whip at that.
Exactly. and what happened to Thunderbolt or Lightning? There was no defining point of him being the god of thunder and lightning, and just the almighty things like that. But it was a fire whip.
And it was a very random fire whip. Like, you only really saw it at 2 points in the movie. He just kind of picked up a chain, and then it was on fire, and that was just
his weapon.
Yes.
There was no defining feature for him as far as his weapon or power, besides him being the god of gods.
Right.
He had no other tool.
Right.
For Athena, she does have her bow and arrow, but she doesn't really utilize it as much as we know her as.
It's just a pretty accessory that seems to just go with her.
Exactly. And I don't know, I just didn't really feel comfortable with that, being someone that Agnes got and, we're grown to be strong women. It was just very, very upsetting.
On a positive note to that, she was one of the last gods.
She wasn't one of the gods that were killed.
Yeah.
She wasn't the first to die. She
wasn't the first to die. She kept fighting.
Yeah.
And
but it still looked too pretty to fight.
Yes.
It was very,
Like, she had on, a cute skirt while she was fighting, and she was just kind of spinning around a lot, and it was just flowing.
Yeah. She was avoiding the blows and not actually trying to fight.
Exactly.
Yes.
It was an interesting fighting style.
It was very pretty.
Yes. And Poseidon, he was one of the gods that actually utilized his powers that was portrayed accurately. He had his Triton, and he used that to help Theseus with the ocean, and,
as they were on their way avoiding the bad guys, Poseidon helped them get rid of them, as he basically created this huge tide that just took out the whole boat of the enemies and saved the good guys.
Which was the only one, out of all the gods that were portrayed, he was the only one
that actually used the power that he
is
described with.
Yeah, exactly. Ares had a hammer. So, I don't know. But, and of course, Hephaestus is the one that has it. So, there's just a lot of misrepresentation of the gods and what their powers are and what they are able to use. And, of course, the biggest point is gods can't die. They can't.
They seem really limited. They never really use the ultimate powers that they had or try to manipulate humans as they are usually described in mythology, and they just die. They don't use the powers that we are used to hearing in the mythology. So, are they really immortal?
Yeah,
is the question we're trying to answer.
And the movie's name is Immortals. So you would just, or me, someone who read mythology, I would assume, okay, it's about the gods, they're immortals, duh, but they die. Ares dies,
and they are easily wounded at that.
Yes, so. Exactly. So there's just a lot of misrepresentation of the gods and their abilities, as well as their emotions and their qualities that we know them having. Another just last point that I'm going to make before Hafsa takes it over is just that the gods were out of their elements. They were all in Olympus all the time, which isn't true. If you were to read mythology, Poseidon is of course in the ocean, and Ares is in, Hades, and just different things like that. Or
Hades.
Hades is
I'm sorry. Hades is in Hades. Sorry, got caught up in the motion. But there's just a lot of inaccuracies within the movie as far as gods. And
gods usually have their own city or temple that they will look after, that they call home on Earth, whereas here in the movie Immortals, the gods are just usually in Olympus looking over people, and they really don't visit Earth too much unless it's Zeus, and they're allowed by Zeus to go down to Earth.
And also, they all look very, very young. Like, too young to be effective gods.
To be wise gods that we usually see them portrayed in the movie.
Exactly. And Poseidon is Zeus's brother, not one of his children, but they make him look like one of his children. Zeus is the only one that looks even mildly like he has some age. He looks at most 25. Whereas
30,
the rest
maybe
30.
Maybe 30.
But the rest of them look like teenagers. And
very young 20s.
They all assume a very submissive role that does not really dignify the gods.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, well, Dad said we're not supposed to do this, rather than,
I am a god, I'm going to take charge, or this is my responsibility. There was just a lack of...
How many times has Hera said, okay, Zeus said not to do this, but he didn't say I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So usually I feel like the gods will find at least some sort of loophole to get what they want, but they were completely submissive to Zeus, and it was more of a respecting Dad than respecting his authority.
All right. So I'll be talking about some of the more important relationships in the movie. Firstly, between the gods and the people. It does not make sense that in the movie the gods, or in particular Zeus, said, we don't interfere with man, we let them do whatever we have to give them a chance to show that we believe in them, and the people are still praying to the gods, but the gods are not present. That does not make any sense at all, because the entire purpose of praying to the gods was for them to help you with whatever you're praying to them for. And that's part of the reason actually why Ares, who we thought was Apollo, got killed by Zeus, because he helped Theseus in his trouble times, where he probably would have died if Apollo hadn't stepped in. And it just is a very odd way to portray it. It kind of made me wonder if the director of the movie kind of read anything with mythology in regards to that, because one thing that is consistent regardless of how many different versions there are is that the gods always jump into men's affairs. They are always like, oh, let me go down and do this, and I might help you here, or I might cause some trouble, or I might get your wife pregnant, but they're always dealing with man. That's kind of their entire purpose. Men are there to worship them. They're there to meddle with man.
Mm-hmm.
Then next is Zeus and Athena's relationship, which the intimacy of it in terms of them being very close is portrayed accurately, but there's a highly sexual undertone that makes it actually rather awkward, because he does refer to her as his daughter.